Oh, hey, Jeremy. I didn't see you there, man.
Hey, man. How you doing?
Pretty good. It's Friday night, hanging out with some friends. About to drink some good beer and talk about some fun stuff. So, I don't know. I mean, this is going to be a really fun one. I think. Wow, we got a lot of people signing on right now. So, I'm going to kill a little bit of time. Yeah, it's starting to. I can't see that number, but it looks like they're joining in.
Like a meter.
Yeah.
It's higher.
It's like a fuel. Yeah, it's like your. Yeah. It goes up and down, back and forth.
Yeah.
Well, let's do this thing. What have you been up to, man? Let's talk here. But first, I want to know how you've been.
Yeah, dude. Thank you, man. I'll tell you, it's been a hell of a week, Daniel. We're just killing it at the brewery. Just slaying. Every beer is just. It's on fire. But anyway, I don't want to talk about that. What I do want to talk about is it is Friday. It is the end of the week. It is about sitting down, having a couple of beers and unwinding. And as you said earlier, it's about hanging with your friends. And that's exactly what we got here tonight. We got old friends. We got new friends. Either way, we got barrel friends.
We got a lot of barrel friends. So I think we're going to do this a little bit differently today. Usually we walk through some beers. All of you watching today gave us a ton of questions to answer beforehand. So what we're going to do today is we are going to open some beers, obviously. I don't know about you, Jeremy. I'm drinking Imperial Cabinet, gin barrel aged. Drinking pretty good right now, actually. It's
that's what I got too.
Nice. It's an 11.5% crusher, if that makes any sense.
Mm-hmm.
But let's do it. I mean, barrels, blending. We got some heavy hitters on. Technically,
it's what we call a slapper in the industry.
I'm still learning all the lingo. I'm still learning. I'm sorry. So drinking a slapper.
Yep.
Let us know your questions in the comments. Let us know what slappers you're drinking tonight. And let's do this thing. So let's bring on, who else to bring on first other than our good pal, our good buddy, founder, the man, Patrick Rue. What's up, Patrick, man? How you doing?
Hey, buddy.
Hey, what's up? I was writing nasty comments to you guys on Facebook.
Oh, nice.
So I guess I should focus now.
Oh, you haven't changed. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Patrick, welcome.
It's a lovely evening. Good to see you guys.
Yeah, dude. Why don't you tell everyone what you're up to, what's going on with Erosion, and how you been?
Yeah. I'm drinking wine. I'm making some wine, and I'll soon be making beer at Erosion up here in Napa Valley. It's a 3.5 barrel system, so just a smidge bigger than the pilot system that you guys use at the brewery, and about 9 times smaller than what you guys brew on normally. So it feels fun. It's good. Now if I make a bad beer and I can throw it down the drain, I won't feel terrible about it. I will feel terrible, but not as terrible as 330 barrels.
Not about
sleep at night.
Yeah. I'll just drink it myself.
Mm-hmm.
Cool, man. Well, good to see you. Who should we bring on next, Jeremy? Who's coming up?
Well, I think we should bring on our friend from the spirit world. And I don't mean our ghost friend. I mean,
yeah, that was an interesting word choice. But yeah, let's do it. Yeah. So next up, Isaac, man. Isaac from High West is ascending upon us. How you doing, man? Why don't you give
What's up, guys? Thanks for having me. I'm doing really good. I'm happy to be here. I'm drinking single malt and relax, and about to open a Black Tuesday. So it's Friday. I'm feeling good.
Dang.
Nice. So for people who don't know you, who do you work for and what do you do there?
So I am the blending and distilling manager for High West Whiskey outside of Park City, Utah. So all the day-to-day blending and distilling activities report up through me. We kind of have a spread out campus where we store and mature a lot of our barrels down in Salt Lake, but all the whiskey is produced in Park City or in Wanchip. So our teams kind of roll around to different facilities pretty frequently, and kind of juggle a bunch of different balls.
Nice. Well, we're glad to have you on. We're actually gonna have you give us a little little lecture here, if you would, I guess, once we get everybody on. But let's keep moving. Isaac, who do you want to bring on next? Your call. It's up to you.
How about Mr. Sierra Nevada himself?
Mr. Sierra Nevada himself. Everybody say hello to Nick. Nick, what's going on, man?
Oh, not a whole lot. Just enjoying a Friday. Seeing some old friends I haven't seen in way too long.
Awesome. So for the viewers, who are you and what do you do there?
I am the lead. I'm the lead barrel monkey here. So I've been in Sierra Nevada for about 19 years. Brew house, mostly production brew house, and then started doing the barrel program about 6 years ago. So that's my life. I unloaded a barrel truck this morning, and I'm going to empty barrels on Monday. So that's the alpha and the omega. And that's all in one.
Awesome, man. Well, your call, obviously. Who are we bringing on next? Who do we want to say hi to?
Oh, dealer's choice.
Let's say what's up to Sarah. Sarah, how's it going?
Good, how are you guys?
Hey.
It's Friday. We're drinking, so
It's Friday.
Why don't you introduce yourself to everybody? Who are you? What do you do? It looks like, I can't tell for sure, but you might have something to do with Oscar Blues. I don't know.
Just a little bit. Yeah, I'm Sarah Lorienti. I'm a director of brewery operations here at Oscar Blues, which just means I get involved with pretty much everything production, from making sure we're brewing what we're supposed to, keeping the awesome production crew up and running, and then the best part is obviously managing the barrel program here.
Awesome. Well, we only have one guest left, so I'm going to say I did this on purpose. I saved the best for last. Sean, how's it going, man?
Hey, how's it going?
How's that? First, two questions to start off. How's that tiki cocktail? And what are you up to? What do you do?
Well, I just got another one, so pretty stoked on that. But no, so I'm Sean. I've been with the Cigar City Brewing for 8 years. I'm the brewing director here, and in my free time, deal with the innovation for Cigar City and run our barrel program.
Nice. Well, thanks everybody for coming on. This is going to be quite an evening. As I say every week, I'm going to try my best to keep this to a happy hour and not happy hours. But we'll see. If anybody has to drop off, feel free. Everybody in the comments will give you a really hard time, and we'll screenshot that and email it to you later so you feel bad. But let's do this. I kind of want to start off, and this is, of course, a little self-serving for us, but just kind of introduce Jeremy. Why don't you tell us about the Black Tuesday Barrel project that just dropped? What is it? And that's kind of what sparked this whole conversation, was the experimentation with wood. So can you do a quick 2-minute pitch on what the box is, and then we'll
Sure.
talk spirits.
Sure. Let me just start by saying that I come from a winemaking background. Patrick brought me into the brewery a little over 6 years ago. So I have only 6 years of real professional beer experience. But in that 6 years, I've watched beer change quite a bit, as it continues to do, and it was changing before I got into it, and it's going to continue to change. And one of the things we do at the brewery, aside from all the other things we do, is that we adjunct the hell out of beers. Not necessarily because that's what we want to do, but because that's what our consumer wants, and that's what the next generation is drinking. All these pastry stouts that taste like candy bars and cakes and desserts and whatnot. And I think that's great. That's fine. That's dandy. That's fun. But to me, it's not as much fun as what you get out of just a really nice beer that's aged meticulously in a great vessel. So this Black Tuesday project was about building that other side of these adjuncted beers to say what can this base beer do side by side with the same beer from the same batch aged in different barrels. And that's not a new concept. I'm sure everybody on the screen has already played with that and already done that. And that being said, you know, Patrick and the team at the brewery were doing that 10 years ago as well. But it had been a little while since we, you know, put out, you know, 4 different barrel variations of the same beer at the same time, so that you can open them all and compare and contrast them together. So essentially, that's what this project is. It's an experimentation of you know, second use barrels from both the spirit world and the wine world. So for this pack, you know, we aged in cognac, we aged in Madeira, we aged in sherry, Oloroso sherry, and we aged in Scotch from Speyside. So, you know, a nice little way to get, you know, beer into our members' hands that, you know, is unadulterated as we can make it. And the other contrasting thing is that base beer Black Tuesday, you know, essentially is, you know, designed to be a bourbon barrel aged beer, and that's what people recognize in it. So, you know, tasting it when it's from cognac and Madeira and sherry and Scotch, you know, and comparing it back to the other one is pretty fun experiment. So essentially that's all it is. Like, let the beer shine, let the barrel do its work, and let it fly.
Nice. Well, let's do this thing. So we're going to start off with Isaac. I think the only spirits guy on the stream right now. So Isaac, can you kind of tell us a little bit about, I mean, as far as wood, how does that impact spirits flavor wise, and how do you as a producer and managing that program, how do you go about choosing barrels and why?
Yeah, I mean, wood in spirits has a dramatic, significant impact on the final character of your product. When, you know, I think most people know this, but some people don't. When we distill spirit out of the still, it's clear, right? We don't pull any color over, and so 100% of the color that you have in your whiskey glass comes from that barrel. And so I think that's really important. A lot of the mouthfeel and the aroma comes from the barrel as well. And so for our process in particular, we make lots of rye whiskey at the distillery. We have started to make lots of bourbon at the distillery. And then we've also got a new project kind of coming on the scene, which is our single malt whiskey. And so that is kind of where all the growth in our in-house production is coming from, actually. And so we're thinking that new American single malt category is really going to take off. And so all of my teams are super excited about it because it is 100% High West oak whiskey. But you know, when we're selecting barrels, it really depends on the product that we're trying to make. And so I think quality is paramount. Quality is number one. So we work with Speyside cooperage and independent stave cooperage almost exclusively for our new barrels. And they're all American white oak, typically number 4 char. Our age profile for the components that are going to go into double rye, into rendezvous rye, into our American Prairie product, and then kind of a standalone bourbon product, they're all going to be like 4 to 6, 7, 8 years old. So we do have a significant amount of time on it. So we want a little bit more of that char on the inside of the barrel because we don't want to over extract. I think one thing that people sometimes get mixed up on is lower char doesn't necessarily mean less flavor. With the higher char numbers, like number 4, alligator char, whatever, you're basically just pyrolyzing the inside of the barrel. And so, everything gets burnt up and you don't have the really rapid extraction. And so if we're trying to create a product where, we want it to come out, in 2 years or in 3 years or 4 years, we'll probably go with like a toasted barrel with a number 1 char or a number 2 char. And so a lot of that kind of, that toasting and charring along with the seasoning, it just allows all of these compounds to be readily extracted. So with wood, just really quick, I'm timing myself. Cut me off if I'm going too long.
Good, man.
Really quick, with wood, we're primarily concerned about only a handful of the structural components. So cellulose is the main structural polymer in wood. But wood is also comprised of hemicellulose. It's got a lot of lignin and tannin. So those are kind of the 3 that we really worry about in the spirits industry. Hemicellulose has a lot of sugars in it, and it also has acetic acid residues. And so some people think that maturation doesn't really start to happen in spirits until you release enough of that acetic acid to drop the pH where you can start hydrolyzing those bigger polymers. This is a beer geek podcast, right? Right. Yeah. So
I'm geeking out totally. So keep going.
And then tannins contribute a lot to mouthfeel, but you don't want too much. So I was trying to draw on a couple of beer comparisons. So much like with alembic beer, spontaneous fermentation, you have these successive blooms of different flora that can that create your flavor profile in alembic beer. If you do extended aging on your staves in the lumberyard, you actually get successive blooms of different microbiological flora in the wood that will break down some of your tannins. And so that kind of softens a lot of the character that you're able to pull out. And then lignin is this horrible, huge, ugly polymeric molecule that has a lot of aldehydes in it. So that's where you get a lot of your aroma from. And so I had a slide I was going to reference, I guess. But so as you char the barrel more and more, you're adding more and more energy, right? You're heating it at a higher temperature. And so you start to break down lignin into these different products depending on how much energy you're adding to it. So the least amount of energy required produces vanillin, which is like a big vanilla bean. Going down, you can have compounds like 4-ethylguaiacol, which is a product that Brett makes, kind of like the smoky, woody notes. And then all the way down, you can just completely destroy the lignin molecule and create phenol, which is sort of like rubber tire. Think like peated malt whiskey from Islay. And so there are all these things that you can do as a distiller purchasing your barrels to impact the quality, the consistency, and the flavor and aroma of your final product. So like I said before, a lot of our rye, a lot of our bourbon is number 4 char, kind of as standard 53 barrels or 53 gallon barrels. For the single malt product, it's a little bit more complicated. So we do X% in new oak, and that is usually aged between like 3 and 5 years. And then we do X% in used cooperage, which is aged between like 5 and 9 years. And then we actually have a small percentage, like a minority component of peated malt whiskey that we make in our downtown Park City location. That's from Scotland, and we put that in used cooperage as well, just to kind of tip the hat to the Scotch malt whiskey tradition. And so that particular product has a lot of threads that all come together to get the balance of distillery character with the American wood character with this kind of smoky distillate character. So yeah.
First question.
Lay it on me. I need to take a breath.
Yeah,
Okay.
Talking about aging wood before coopering. Very typical, French and American oak for wine barrel usage to go, 3 to 4 years of aging before coopering. With aging the wood before coopering for spirits, like what's the common age time, and are you looking for the same things? You're looking for different things? Just totally curious.
Yeah. So for us, we're really looking for consistency across our different product portfolios. So the number 4, we get a classic barrel from ISC, classic barrel from Speyside. So they have about 9 to 12 months seasoning, outdoor seasoning. And then for the single malt product, we do bring in smaller lots of staves that have been finished for 18 or 36 months. And so that's something we're playing around with a little bit. We're trying to target the longer seasoned staves for products that we want to age for an extended period of time. So think like, the 10-year anniversary of the single malt. We don't want to like blast the consumer with tannins.
Sure. Is it all in tannins? Is that what we're doing with the dry aging pre-cooperage? It's like pretty complicated chemistry, and so that's kind of what I lean on. There might be other things, but at High West, that's what we're really concerned about with the extended seasoning time. Right. Awesome.
Isaac, we have a question from the audience that I want to hit before we move on to some of the pre-select questions. So, Booze Reviews says, Isaac, are you using any French oak at High West? Any used barrels?
Yeah, so I have a prop. Funny you should ask about that. So we do have a line of kind of like our single barrel program releases called the Barrel Select, and those are kind of our R&D playground a little bit as distillers and blenders. And so we're taking our products and finishing them in other kind of cool barrels, which is, not totally unlike the Black Tuesday lineup. So we don't have any French oak in our products that we release year round, but French oak plays a pretty frequent role in our wine finish products, and then just the other kind of fun barrel select releases. They're really, really impactful. And so if you, as a distiller, if you're looking to get a little bit more structure from your whiskey, a little bit of French oak goes a long way into like really building those tannins. And so it's not a frequent contributor to our run of the mill products, but we like to play with it. And then as far as used cooperage, the majority of our single malt is aged in used cooperage. And so, we partner with MGP to bring in 2 and 3 year old column still whiskey for American Prairie and Double Rye. And we bring those barrels in and then dump them and then almost immediately fill them with single malt. And so that kind of helps to dampen some of the extractive character that we get from those new barrels, and then kind of lean on some of the distillate character, the distillery character that we want.
Boom, that was super informative. Yeah, people are enjoying this nerding out, it looks like, in the comments, man. Okay, let's move on to some questions. We have some pre-selects. So first question up, let's go with Erne on Beer Advocate asks, if you're planning to age in more than one barrel, does it matter which one you do first? Would you do the rarest barrel last simply to reduce the number of steps after that point where the beer might fail? Or are there other flavor implications as well? Jeremy, you said you wanted to, you ticked your name on this one, said you wanted to take a stab at it. You want to try running through this?
Well, yeah, and I'll keep it brief so that one of the other folks can chime in. I look at that so really the way I read that question is when we're talking same liquid, multiple barrels. So, primary aging vessel, finishing vessel, depending on how you look at it, there's, a lot of the spirits guys will do this. So they'll age in a barrel and then finish in a separate barrel. We do it at the brewery with our reserve and grand reserve programs. We do double barrel and triple barrel aging. But I look at it as like a progression, like how you want it to finish and how you want it to start. So a good example of that is we just released our first double barrel aged version of a beer we have called So Happens It's Tuesday. And the first 18 months that beer is spent in Scotch Speyside. And then the second year or 12 months, so was it 18 plus 12? That's 30, right? So 18 months in Scotch and then 12 months in bourbon. And the reason that I chose that order is because I wanted the bourbon to finish the beer. And I wanted to have an influence of Scotch, but I didn't want Scotch to be the upfront flavor profile for that beer. So I look at it that way. And then in the Grand Reserve program, the last triple barrel aged Black Tuesday we finished in Copper and King's apple brandy barrels, which, that was by design as well. We wanted to finish with a little bit different kind of flavor profile. But that's kind of the way I look at it. It's very simple. Like there's a finishing barrel and there's the upfront barrel. And you can use the finishing barrel to kind of round out some of the flavors that you're picking up initially.
Anybody want to tag on? Let's hear it. Nick, you look like you got something to say, man. What are your thoughts on this?
My experience is I tend to go from the strongest character to the lightest character. So we've got one that we started in Narwhal in bourbon barrels, transferred the beer from the bourbon barrels into rum barrels, then transferred it into brandy barrels, and then now it's in port barrels. So it's gotten 4 different barrels. And we did the port barrels last just because, and this just intuition that the more delicate port flavor might finish best, and it might get lost if it goes into succeeding barrels. So a lot of it's guesswork and just intuition.
True.
Cool. Anybody have anything to tag on, or we'll move to another question? Good.
Oh, I have a question, Daniel. So
Yeah.
I know Sarah and Sean have worked with Amberana in a collaboration with each other. So I want to hear about Amberana because that's a really cool. It's super hot.
Yeah, we did that a couple years ago in our collab with Scar City and Bambrana. We did Amberana oak spirals. So we had it in a bourbon barrel aged beer that we blended with our brandy barrel aged fitty, and then put them in a fermenter to finish with Amberana oak spirals for about a month. And then twice a week would kind of recirc that tank to just try to get the liquid moving through the Amberana oak spirals. It's probably one of my favorite barrel aged beers we've ever made. The Amberana really finished the brandy and the bourbon barrel aged beer very nicely. Just added some more cinnamon, ginger characters. It was really cool that you don't normally get out of barrel aged beer.
Spice. Yeah, it's a lot of baking spice. It is, Sarah. It finishes. It rounds out a lot of the other flavors and works well. We did one of the releases that we did with Unapoo was an Amberana one, and so it manages its spiciness really, really well. It can go over the top really quickly, but a little bit goes a long way. But it's definitely one of the more intriguing, unique woods that we've used.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask. Is it does a little bit truly go a long way? Yeah. So it's very powerful.
It's one of the more distinct woods I've ever aged beer on.
Yeah, I've had some spirits finish with that, and it's it's quite powerful. I was just curious what the extraction rate's like. Would you mind sharing? Like, you might not remember, but that size of batch, like how many spirals would be equilibrium sort of treatment? If it was 1 spiral per barrel, physical barrel, how does that work out in a blend, really?
I believe
Way less than that.
Okay.
Sorry.
Yeah. It's less than a spiral barrel. It's definitely came in about 4 foot long pieces and probably used 4 feet per 5 barrels.
Wow. Yeah.
You'll get it quickly.
Yeah. Something we haven't played with at the brewery, but it's on the list, the long list.
All right, I'm going to keep this thing moving on. So the next question's pretty simple, but pretty convoluted or complex, I guess. So I'll take volunteers on answering this one. Pretty basic. How do you decide what type of barrel to use? So seems simple, but that seems also pretty layered. Who wants to hop in on this one? That sounds fun.
I could take it. So if it's not a series we've been doing that we do every year, if we're just trying to do something creative we've never done before, I honestly just have really good relationships with a couple of my barrel brokers. We work with some local distilleries, but then also some national-wide brokers. I have one I speak to every single week. We have a standing phone call on Monday, and he calls me with anything cool. And if he has something that's unique, something we've wanted to get over the past couple of years, something we've never tried before, we'll bring it in, even if we weren't planning on making a beer, and start brewing a beer the next week to fill the barrels with. And just always trying to keep new things coming out and good barrels coming in here.
Awesome. I'd say half the time it's the opposite for us. It's more we have the barrel, and then we've got to come up with the right beer to put in it. And it's because I'm a sucker for the barrel brokers. They'll call me up and say, "Oh, we got this really cool barrel," and I'll buy it, and then I'm like, "Oh shit, I gotta formulate a recipe and brew it in the pilot and do something with them now." And so that's a lot of the fun, the small scale stuff. I mean, a big stout in a bourbon barrel, is going to be good, but if you get like an Islay malt Scotch barrel or something that's not a typical flavor. You really got to, or gin barrels. Gin barrels were the hardest thing for me to really get my head around, like what beer would go good in a gin barrel. And it's fun to play with those lighter things. But a lot of it's guesswork.
Yeah, for sure. And then a lot of it is like, controlling your impulse. Like you said, Sarah, like I got this, and you're like, oh, I want it. I don't know what I'm gonna do with it, but I really want it. And I do the same thing. I'll say yes to things and then go figure out how to get the permission. Like, I'll put this order in. I need to get approval for this. This is my idea. So it's hard to say no when there's something you wanted for a while.
Okay, I think that sort of leads somewhat naturally into this next question. So from Twitter, I can't even pronounce this guy's handle, so I'm not going to try. But he's asking, which is more important when you are selecting a barrel, the beer you are brewing or the spirit that was in the barrel? So I think he's trying to say, do you brew a beer to be put in barrel, or do you have a barrel and then figure out what needs to go into it? Yeah, that's another kind of complex question that I don't have answers to, but somebody here might.
I think it's a mix of both. Sometimes you get really cool barrels that are intriguing enough to develop an entire project around, and sometimes that you have a beer that you really want to brew and you want to select the right barrel for it. And I've been wanting to brew a fruited barley wine for a while, and so we brewed it with cherries and raspberries, and I was like, what kind of barrel would go perfect with that? So we chose like a ruby port. But it's that, like, we also just got in a bunch of pear brandy barrels, and I have no idea what I'm going to do with those. But it sounded so cool that I couldn't just say no to them. And so it really depends on the situation.
Yeah, and I think sometimes you try to do, you get a very special barrel and you try to do something really special for it, and you end up ruining both the beer and the barrel. And I have a good example of that. I once got my hands on a 70-gallon cigar barrel. So Sean, you'd probably like this barrel. Like it's very thin and very long, hang off the rack by a foot off of each end. And it came from Siniquanon. Was Patrick, as you know, is a very, very cultish winery here in California. And so I did this beer de paille, and I dried these grapes on straw for like 4 months and threw those into some wort and spontaneously fermented it and put it in this barrel, and created the most acidic liquid that anybody could ever want to taste, and just screwed up both the beer and the barrel trying to do something really, really complex. I still have that barrel in my cellar if you guys ever want to come by and see what a grand mistake tastes like. I have it. And it's a reminder that, sometimes you push it a little too far.
But if you don't have one of those every once in a while, right, you're not trying hard enough, I think.
Exactly.
Yeah, we accept a little bit of failure over here, right, Jeremy? Jeremy says that sometimes.
I'm the king of it. But I've also been pretty successful. So that it goes hand in hand, right?
But if you don't dump it, you're not accepting the failure. You're holding on to it, waiting for it to get better.
No. I'm sharing the failure and teaching others.
Learning experience.
And I would say, like, I can show you something. I can show you real failure. But you're right, Patrick. It might be the best vinegar ever made.
Just make sure the failure doesn't spread to other barrels.
Yeah.
Oh no. I'm going to keep this going. So Drunk Troll on Beer Advocate is asking us, do you have a minimum time in which you would consider barrel aging? If it is less than 6 months, don't bother, etc. I have had a lot of beer in the past that has been labeled barrel aged, but wouldn't have known that without the label. Barrel contribution was not very present. I always assumed that was a function of the limited time in the barrel. So basically, what's everyone's take on the minimum amount of time that beer should spend in barrel for it to be acceptable?
For me, that just totally depends on the beer, on what you're trying to accomplish. So I kind of have two different categories: barrel aged and barrel finished. So we've done some IPAs in barrels, and that's just not what I want to age for a year. So I'll have it in bourbon barrels for 2 months, and for me that's finishing in a bourbon barrel, not really aging, because I'm not trying to get the age character. I'm just trying to get the accent of the bourbon and the wood. Not real develop any age character in the beer itself. So it really depends. Each beer is unique.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, I think, we have some rules per beer. There's certain beers that have rules, but we've also done. We did a beer a couple years ago called Quad Kisses, and the idea was it was a quad, and it went into 4 different barrel types, but only for a small amount of time. So that was like that was the kiss part of it. So it was literally 3 months and 4 different barrel types, and then it got blended and packaged. And then we've also done a beer called April Showers that was, new puncheon fermented. So unrinsed, brand new puncheons with sawdust and everything. That wort just went in and we fermented in there. And as soon as it was done fermenting, we pulled it out, packaged it, and then barreled down the next beer into it and put it away for a couple of years. So I think I'm with Nick. It's all like project and concept related for me.
You can also really be affected by your climate too. I know down in Tampa where it's hot as hell almost all the time, you have a lot more of expansion into the wood, and so you're going to pick up a lot more character a lot quicker. And so it definitely depends on your humidity, your climate, all that stuff.
Yeah, that's a good point, Sean. Absolutely, temperature and humidity will definitely affect your age time, along with the vessel too. It's something we haven't mentioned as well. The size of the vessel. Isaac, I don't know if High West, if you guys use any like really small format barrels for quick aging, but a lot of smaller upstart and craft distilleries definitely do, because they just don't have the time to wait for a 53-gallon barrel. So barrel size definitely affects it as well.
I think that's a good transition to another question that was asked. So we have a lot of homebrewers coming on here, and they're watching, and there's actually a Facebook group, like home brewing barrel aged homebrew beers, that we reached out to, and so there's quite a few people watching from that. So the question is basically, Snickel Dragon asks, what would you consider to be the smallest barrel size worth using?
Okay, I'll go. As somebody who just bought 25-gallon barrels from a distiller in Colorado, I think they're all worth using. It's just different project related kind of things. I'm working on, trying to do a barrel experience kind of thing at the brewery, where you can come in and taste several different Black Tuesday barrels. We'll have 5-gallon, 10-gallon, 12-gallon, 15, 25, 27s, and 30s. And we'll be able to taste different things and, try to build this, like, you want to make a bid on a barrel, or you want to take something, privately, we can work that out for you. So I think there's, depending on the project, I think you can use a barrel, any of those size barrels. If you would have talked to me, 6-7 years ago when I was just making wine, I would have laughed at any barrel that, wasn't, 225 liters or bigger. But at this point, there are people that want that barrel experience and want to say, this is mine, and I'm apt to give it to them.
I feel like it depends if it's a new barrel too. Like a new 5-gallon barrel can be really overwhelming.
Yeah.
But if it's been used for bourbon or whiskey, it might, or if it's alligator char, it's not going to be quite as intense. As a home brewer, I think, that'd be. Yeah, don't buy a new one.
Yeah, good point, because it'll be a lot.
Yeah. You're muted, Daniel. Kind of like you on mute.
Oh, that's cool, man.
Damn.
All right, well, it was nice hanging out today. I'm out. Patrick and Jeremy, you guys got this. I'm done. So next question, in seriousness, So Michael Wallace on Reddit is asking, sherry casks are big in aging malt, scotch, and other spirits, but I haven't seen them much, if anywhere, in the barrel-aged beer scene. Do they not pair up well with beer styles? Interesting question, because we just did a sherry barrel-aged beer, but curious to get some other thoughts around here. Sarah, Nick, Sean, what do you guys think on this one?
I haven't used them yet. It's always fun to try new things. We've done the Madeira, we've done different cognac. I guess my malt or my barrel brokers haven't tempted me yet with that. I can't imagine it would be bad. I mean, sherry character is one of those flavor attributes that you aspire towards in barrel aging. So I'd love to try them.
They are really interesting. There's so many different types of sherry that you can get, but one of the things that we've found from consumer comments is that sherry can be really polarizing. And so while I like it, a lot of other people don't. So that might be one of the reasons you don't see it quite as often. But if you like sherry, and I mean, those barrels can add some really, really beautiful characteristics, some stouts or barley wines or anything you want to put into it.
I've got a question on that. For the brewers who have used them, do you worry about sherry floor yeast, or are you flash pasteurizing before it goes into a bottle, or maybe trying to target Oloroso rather than PX, so it's oxidative rather than microbiological? What's like the stability factor?
Oloroso usually, but also pasteurizing.
Yeah, Oloroso is a fave for aging. I have to be honest, the beer that we've used to age in that is 19 to 20% alcohol, so we haven't had to mess with the pasteurization part of it. But the PX, the Pedro is my favorite sherry. So I know it's kind of weird and sweet and funky and all those kind of things, but I love that. I love to use that as a float on the top of my pina colada. It's like, it's the best. Yeah, sherry barrels are, I don't know, there's something about getting like really old European barrels in. They're a pain in the ass. They leak. They're all misshaped. Like, they don't stack well because none of them are the same size. Even though they look the same, they're not. But they're sexy. Like, I like sherry barrels. They're fun.
And I can never find a bung to fit them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that too. Yeah, but they're a pain in the ass. But man, they changed the look of that cellar in California. It's got this little European corner, with those sherry barrels. So it's pretty cool.
Mm-hmm.
We ended up having to buy a lathe to like get custom bungs to fit of all the sherry barrels that go into our malt and stuff. Is a huge pain.
Yeah.
I'll buy some from you.
Oh, nice. Dang it, Nick.
All right.
Got a new supplier.
Yeah.
Let's keep going. So Vitis Vinefera on Reddit asks, this is kind of a fun question, actually. Why do brewers melt, or maybe it's not, I'm not sure, but why do brewers melt wax to stop leaky barrels from leaking when the proper thing to do with them is hammer the hoops back with coopering tools? Hoops drive plus hammer.
Yeah. I'm curious who this person is. But yeah, that's one step. Driving hoops and hammers. That's definitely, where you'd want to start. I have to tell you, I was in the wine business for quite a while and got all of my coopering skills there. And I'm sorry, Patrick, but we talked about this when I was interviewing back, years ago, that I'd made some sort of comment. I don't know if you remember this in my interview, but I was like, well, who taught your guys how to deal with barrels? And somebody else in that interview answered, well, I did. And I'm like, cool, who taught you? And he's like, well, I taught myself. I'm like, oh, okay, cool. So you don't know what you're doing. Awesome. Come here and I can show you exactly what you need to do. But yeah, it's actually, it's a funny thing that this guy says melting wax, because that is something you can do. And I have seen people melting wax to seal holes. But I could also tell you that you can use wax without melting it to to seal barrels. Like that whole idea of that you have to melt it and heat guns and all that kind of stuff. Sometimes you create more problems than you're solving when you're playing around that way. But either way, there's a lot of tricks to fill to make barrels seal. And some of them are just letting the barrel be. Wood will soak. There's another little trick. You can go in the crows of a barrel and just kind of rearrange the grains in the barrel, and it'll stop leaking. But then it'll spring a leak again a year later. So, it takes a special cellar worker to really love, working on barrels. It's actually not that hard to do. You just have to have a little bit of patience, and you have to understand wood capillary action, where liquid wants to flow, why it wants to flow there, because there's no resistance. You got to create resistance, and it'll find the next place where it wants to go. Usually that's up at the top of the barrel. It'll just be an air thing. But anyway, anybody else?
Wax is pretty good for like wood boring beetles. That it's not about the tightness of the joints. It's about something created a hole in your barrel.
Correct.
Just sad, but often a piece of wood stuck in there is a little bit better than wax.
Yeah, I mean that's the first thing I learned was bamboo skewers. You take a little bamboo skewer, cut it off, use it like a little nail, and as you pound that thing, it actually expresses and becomes bigger. So.
All right, I'm going to move on to the next question. Got a few good ones. So we kind of touched on temperature, but this Michaels Wallace on Reddit asks, it's kind of interesting, and maybe we can go around the horn on this a little bit, but what kind of effects do temperature, humidity, etc. have on the barrel aging process? Can you get creative with it to fit specific desired effects, or is there more or less one best practice for it? Does it vary by style or by beer barrel? For example, Texas whiskey, I don't know if this is true, but this is his statement. For example, Texas whiskey is often aged hotter and faster than its Appalachian counterparts to accomplish a unique flavor profile and turn it around quicker. Didn't know if that also applies to beer. That is a big, long question, but any thoughts around temperature, humidity effects on Isaac? You want to touch on if that's even a real statement with spirits? I don't even know.
Yeah, definitely. It has to do with like the relative humidity in your area. And so if there's, more water on the outside of the barrel, then you can kind of influence how easily the water kind of goes across that semi-permeable membrane of the wood. But there's two schools of thought in the spirits industry. Like, do you do your barrel warehousing corrugated tin so that you experience the full fluctuation of the temperature cycles, or do you have big granite walls to keep it at 65 degrees, all year long? And we subscribe to the former rather than the latter. But I'm curious to hear what you guys have to say.
Every time somebody says that the former and the latter, my brain is just.
we like corrugated tin. So in Wanship, we have like we see negative 10 to 15 degrees Fahrenheit in the wintertime, but then we'll see like 95 degrees in the summertime. So we have this massive swing of temperature throughout the year.
Yeah, I mean, for us, back here, this is all a temperature controlled warehouse. We're at 55 degrees, constant year round. And that's for the vast majority of our barrel aged beer. It's for us, and beer is a very different thing than spirit. I mean, really, it can spoil. I mean, I don't, there's not gonna be a lot of bacterial activity in distilled spirit, but for us, so it's a balance of, in chemistry, any reaction goes faster at a warmer temperature, but also the warmer we get it, the more biological activity there'll be. So we find a nice balance at about 55 degrees. Now in our sour room, where we're encouraging other biological activity, it's definitely warmer, and that's intentional. But we do see a quicker evaporation rate in those barrels, and a lot more drying.
Awesome. Anyone else? Thoughts?
Yeah,
All
we,
right.
we are also in like a corrugated tin kind of area. So in Florida, we have zero temperature control over a barrel room. So you're going to see the expansion and contraction of the beer into the wood. A little bit. Sorry.
It's good,
I
man.
broke into someone's house to use their Wi-Fi. But no, we are seeing. We definitely see a lot of change throughout the season. But because of the hot temperature, you just have to taste the beer a lot more and kind of see where it's at. And because you're going to, some beers pick up a lot quicker than other ones, and you want to keep the beer from going too far into that green wood and kind of staying in that nice charred area where you're getting the good character instead of what we call kibble, which is kind of this, or like pine bedding, which you can get from kind of a green wood kind of character. And so there's benefits to both.
Awesome. Okay. We actually have a cool little comment here. So Nick says, pretty sure I met Isaac at a craft spirits conference in Minneapolis. Hi, Isaac. I work for a medium range craft distillery. Any recommendations on how to build relationships with bigger breweries? Well, Nick, why don't you tell us who you work? What's your distillery? That's step one. Let's do that. But I thought this was pretty interesting. But Nick, any tips for how you build these kind of relationships? I'm sorry, Isaac. I'm reading Nick's comment. Isaac, give us your.
I mean, I just cold call people sometimes. But I mean, that seems like a really good question for everybody here.
Yeah.
Do you appreciate getting cold called by distillers, or?
Yeah, it's awesome.
I do.
I mean, everybody wants to try something that nobody else has, and
Yeah,
the
send me a
smaller you
bottle.
are, the better. Yeah.
Yeah, send me a bottle. I like to try it.
I've never been upset by a distiller calling me.
Yeah. Send 2 bottles if you're going to send Jeremy one.
I think it's definitely like a good community, and kind of a brother and sisterhood. So I feel like I've never had resistance or any kind of
Damn. Sierra Nevada on it. They just commented, "Hi, Nick."
Yeah.
They're going like, wow, dude. Wow, Sierra Nevada.
Oh no, they know I'm here.
You're not just hiding in the cellar. You're out. They know you're out there. Okay.
I know. Well, my bunk's back there, so.
All right. I'm gonna keep this thing moving. I want to try and get us all off at a reasonable happy hour. So we got a few more questions, and then we'll open it up to kind of just open questions from the comments. Next up, this is an interesting one, I think. So Michaels Wallace on Reddit says, I'm a home brewer looking to get into barrel aging or wood flavors in general, but I typically only brew on a 5-gallon batch at a time. Should I buy a barrel and just brew the 5-gallon batch multiple times, find smaller barrels, or can I get by with wood additives? I remember Cigar City added cigar box wooden dowels for aging into some of their specialty Maduro about 9 years ago. Is there a good way to estimate flavor impact for this method? I think, I feel like we have somebody from Cigar City who may be able to help us out with this.
Yeah, get it, Sean.
All right. So yes, that actually was the first time that Spanish Cedar, at that point it was called Humidor IPA. It was actual little dividers and cigar boxes that we used to age that first one. Since then, we've found suppliers that can give it us in a better format than little pieces of wood. But it really depends. Each different type of wood is going to contain unique wood sugars in different quantities, and it's hard to give a one-size-fits-all answer for wood additives. And in terms of barrel aging, you always have to look at surface area in terms of how long or what kind of contact time you're going to need. But wood additives are great. You just have to try it frequently, and yeah. It's all about experimentation.
Yeah, I would say like just follow up on that, and Sean's right on. Like when the extraction level is unknown, you just got to stick on it. You're right. You got to keep tasting.
Cool. All right, I got a few more questions here. So here's a good one. Jolly Nichols on Reddit says, I've heard some pro brewers say they don't put anything in barrel that they wouldn't love to drink beforehand. I've heard others say they design recipes specifically for barrels, meaning the beer is not necessarily a nice beer beforehand, but is made great by barrel aging. In your opinions, are both viable options? What approach do you all prefer when barrel aging beers? That's a pretty good question. I mean, Pat, maybe you want to talk to this one, just given Black Tuesday's history. What do you think about this one?
Yeah, well, I think when you of course want the beer to be able to be delicious, right out of the gate. But sometimes things need some aging. Alcohol needs to mellow a bit. And, bourbon barrel really helps mellow it out and kind of fill in the flavors. So I'd say with Black Tuesday, right out of the fermenter is not, you can tell it has good bones, but it's like not something you really want to attack at that point. So that beer really needs a barrel. I'd say for a lot of other brewery beers, these are great beers right out of the tank, and we could just put it into a keg, but decide to put it into a barrel to increase the complexity and give it a little something extra. But that's
Thanks.
what I got.
Thanks, Patrick.
Welcome.
Sarah, what's your take? I mean, how do you approach it at Oscar Blues? Do you brew a beer specifically designed to be put into barrel, or is it you want to drink it beforehand? Like, what's the approach there?
A little of both. I think first and foremost, kind of like what Pat was saying, just because you brew something specifically to put in a barrel doesn't necessarily mean it isn't good out of the barrel. The biggest step we took towards barrel aging was our barrel aged 1050, which was just our imperial stout, and we took a chance and threw it in barrels, and it turned out great. So that one was just a great beer that we decided to try putting in a barrel. But since then, we've definitely found barrels and then specifically brewed a beer to put in them. Even just recently, though, we brewed a beer specifically to put in gin barrels and had a little extra and carbonated it, put it in kegs, and put it on tap. And it was a great beer by itself. I'm excited to see how it comes out of the barrels, but yeah, kind of a little bit of both.
Awesome.
Sorry, Daniel. If I can bring it back to moonshine or White Lightning, that is not necessarily that delicious of a beverage. Do you agree with me, Isaac? Yeah. So bourbon really needs that barrel to make it what it is. It is the barrel is what makes it bourbon. And now making wine, you can take a Chardonnay that is really great on its own, but if you stick it in a barrel, you just get like a different element. You get a totally different type of wine or different style and different mouthfeel, but it could be really great stainless steel as well. So,
but throwing a bad beer into barrels is not going to fix that bad beer.
Correct.
No. Bummer.
Dang.
I would also say that brewing a lambic style beer and fermenting it in a stainless steel tank and trying to drink it 3 weeks later wouldn't be great either. So there certainly are like some beers that need that development, strictly from concept. It's not necessarily that it makes the beer better, but it's what you have to do with said beer to get to the final place.
And those beers have Enterobacter the first few weeks, so you want to avoid that stuff.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, I have a good one, and it's the first one about blending. So here's a question from Beer Advocate, username Brew Addict. If every barrel is different and you're trying to blend them together to make something pleasing, one, how many different blends might you use in a run? And does that result in different tasting bottles or kegs? Yeah. Who wants to handle this one? That's a fun question.
Yeah.
Well, I'll jump in a little bit. I mean, blending's a big part of the art of it. Every one of the barrels is different. If we're putting together a blend of our production barrel-aged beer, say we're picking 100 individual casks, we'll have kind of a mathematical formula for the distribution of different ages, an average of 12 months with maybe a standard deviation, some much older, some a little bit younger. But besides that, I mean, you have to taste every individual barrel and kind of envision how that's going to build on the whole. And, so I actually try to flavor match each iteration to be similar to the previous one, but there's going to be differences batch to batch. I think that's unavoidable. Try to minimize it though.
Yeah, I have a little bit of experience and Patrick, you can remember this when we launched our Brewery to Rue brand. Our biggest bright tank at the time was 60 barrels, and we had a couple releases that were 300 and 330 barrel releases or so. So making a alembic inspired goose blend in 6 different parts of the same batch. 6 different bright tank fills. We're bottling 30 barrels a day, so each bright tank fill was 2 days of packaging to try to get those things to line up and actually taste the same. Wow, how do I say this without sounding egotistical? It truly is like blending is an art for sure, but it's not. It doesn't take an artist to do it. What it takes is a little bit of focus and understanding of what the final product's going to be, and then as Nick kind of said, just remembering that all the way through. That if you're developing one blend and you're setting in this case a barrel in there that has a Kalamata olive sort of flavor or a geranium sort of flavor, that you're going to look for another one of those kind of barrels for the next part of that blend, because you have to sometimes it's those small pieces that really make something special. At the same time, it's that small piece that can really ruin something, but you have to plan based on that. And it's almost counterintuitive, because you want to blend on flavor. You want to blend on your senses and not on paper, but you need paper to track your senses to some degree, because you can't taste 200 individual barrels and understand everything. You need to write some stuff down. You need to grab some things from one side of the graph over to the other side of the graph. But blending it's a thing, and when you do it well, you're rewarded and people think you're great. And then when you go a little bit too far, sometimes you kind of get the boot in your ass too. And fair play as well. Sometimes you mess some things up with your bright ideas.
Here's a good question from Stefan Weber. He says, Jeremy, are you sitting in your new chair?
I'm not. No, I'm not. I found a chair from the dumpster today, and I took it home. I don't care. I'm not. It's a good chair. It didn't need to go in the dumpster, so I took it home.
That's a good one. Okay, one last question from our pre-selected questions, and we're going to move on to comment questions. So this one, again, comes from a homebrewer, and he says, for barrel-aged beers that contain coffee, is the coffee component a top-off added after the aging process, or is the coffee component also aged in the barrels? Thoughts?
We add coffee post-barrel aging.
My preference is not to age coffee ever.
No aging coffee. There's
Unclassed coffee is not.
Yeah, it's good at a finishing touch.
So just a kiss. Awesome. Okay, so we have a ton of questions in the comments. Let's do a few of those, and then we'll get everybody off and keep enjoying your beers and drinking your beers. But let's see here. So this is an interesting question. Has anyone experimented in building your own barrels? That's just piquing my curiosity. Sounds like a resounding no.
I've not. I mean, I'd like to learn. I mean, I wouldn't mind going to a cooperage for a week and volunteering. That'd be awesome.
Maybe there's some cooperage.
I'd like to be paid by the brewery to volunteer somewhere. I don't want to go on my vacation to volunteer somewhere. I just want to be clear about that.
All right. So Wit Beer Tours is asking, how do you actually move from the barrels to bottles? Do you just dump all the barrels into one batch and then bottle it? Someone hit us with this one. Let's go to Sarah. Looks like she has something to say.
Yeah, I guess my understanding of that question is, I mean, physically how we do it. So for us, we say it's called bulldogs. It's kind of a long stainless steel arm that goes into the barrel. You can pressurize the barrel or create a pump to suck the liquid out of the barrel, put it into a tank, decide kind of like we just talked about what you're blending, how you're blending them. For us, once they're in a tank, we centrifuge, separate any of the solids out from the barrel, and then we pasteurize just to make sure that nothing's still growing in it before we put it in cans.
Awesome. I feel like that nailed it. Anybody have anything to add on to that one? Okay, let's see what else we got here. We already touched on that. So Mezcal Talk asks, do any of you fine brewers have a Mezcal barrel-aged beer in the works? This sounds like one of those how do distillers make contacts in the beer world. Have any of you done a Mezcal barrel-aged beer, or do you have plans?
We released one this winter.
We did.
Go ahead, Nick.
Go ahead. We did quite a while ago. We did a Scotch ale in Mezcal, and that was one of those times where we got a line on some Mezcal barrels and just had no idea what the hell to do with them. So when they showed up, we snipped them and kind of put our heads together and decided, Scotch ale, and it was delicious.
Yeah, we did a double barrel project finishing in Mezcal barrels, but we also had to hold back a decent portion of un-Mezcaled barrels to be able to kind of temper it back, because it can get a little intense and a little herbal pretty quickly.
Yeah, so Patrick, I'd have to lean on you for this, but in my time in 6 years at the brewery, we have not touched a Mezcal or tequila barrel since previous beers. But did you ever work with Mezcal?
Yeah, that's something I was always looking for, and then I really got into Mezcal, and I found the Mezcals I really liked were Blancos. I never saw a barrel at all.
Right.
So I kind of gave up on that one, but I love Mezcal, and we just need to find beers that fit. Put a little shot in there and drink them together.
Yeah. Well, I actually
get around the barrels.
I was actually on the phone this last week with Matt Brindleson at Firestone, talking about a collab we're trying to do, and it's going to be a tequila Mezcal barrel aged agave syrup fed fermentation type of beer. Yeah, exactly. Like, it's scary, totally. I kind of told them about a little bit of the trials and tribulations that go along with those barrels, but they feel like they've used them very successfully, and we're gonna trudge forward and try to promise a beer that we don't think we're gonna be able to create. Really put the pressure on ourselves,
Cool.
Yeah, should be fun.
Right. Keep it moving. So we see this question quite a bit, and it's just the nature of the type of beers and the packaging we put it in. But what's the group thought on aging bottled beers, in particular these big barrel-aged stouts and barley wines? Should you? Can you? Would you? Let's hear it. Who's got? I know everybody has a thought on this one.
I'd say you can, and sometimes I do, but not necessarily intentionally. We already aged it. It's when we package it, it's ready, and it's a gamble. If you want to put it away for a year or two, it might get a little better. It might not. I know it's really good when we package it.
Any other thoughts on this one?
Come on, Patrick, get it.
Yeah, come on, Patrick. I see it on your face, man.
I love how wineries around here like release something and they'll be like, "You drink it in 5 years, like it'll reward you." It's like, screw you. Like, I want to drink this today. Like, I bought it. Like, let me drink it. I would say anything below 14% or anything I'm going to change it. Anything below 15% alcohol that's been aging in a barrel for at least a year is probably going to be in its ideal state within a year of being packaged. And then anything above that ABV, and it's also sugar content, and we're talking about non-sour beers. I think you'll generally be rewarded with some extra age. For something like Black Tuesday, I feel like age really rewards you. I think the first release that we ever came out with, still tastes awesome and is still improving. But I agree with Nick for the majority of barrel aged beers out there.
Yeah.
Cool. Here's a fun one. Which type of barrel aged stout is harder to make, adjunct stouts or really good non-adjunct stouts? So barrel only or barrel plus some sort of adjunct treatment? I feel like Sarah again's got that look on it, like she's just dying to comment on this one. What do you think?
I don't think it's necessarily harder or easier for either one. It kind of just depends. Some adjunct stouts are a little bit harder. I've had some where we order what we think we need, add it to the beer, and it's not nearly enough. You can't taste it at all. We don't want to put that it's in it on the can. If it's on the can, we want to make sure you taste it. So it ends up taking a month longer because you have to reorder ingredients, add more. And then really good non-adjunct stouts, I think that's just, I wouldn't say easier, but from a production standpoint, I mean, you're doing less. You take it out of the barrel, you filter, you pasteurize it, and it's good to go.
Cool. Jeremy, thoughts? Oh, go for it. I like this.
I feel like an easier question to answer is, which type of barrel-aged stout is harder to sell? Which is...
I can answer that one.
Yeah. So trying to find, I think, a non-adjuncted stout that really hits all the complexities that the consumer wants these days is almost more difficult than just adding things in secondarily.
I think that's true. People, unfortunately, people want over the top sort of flavors and whatnot, and I get it. But I respect nuance, and balance more than anything else. But then again, I'm an old dude that likes drinking bourbon and scotch, wine, and then lager. So I'm not drinking those stouts anyway. So
I think kind of compared to what we were talking about
Remember
earlier.
when adjunct was a bad word?
We were talking earlier about how if you have a bad beer, put it in a barrel, it's not going to fix anything. If something goes wrong in the barrel, adding adjuncts isn't going to fix anything. You got to just accept the failure and dump it.
No. Well said. That's absolutely true.
Awesome. Here's a good one. I think Patrick might have the answer for, or the winning answer for. But what is the longest you have left a beer in a barrel? I don't know what everybody's done, but Patrick, what's still in there, right? I think it's still sitting there.
I feel like Sam Adams probably has this beat with Utopias.
Oh, there's
some Utopias barrel, but yeah. So we have a beer for my daughter, brewed in 2011. Similar, like, I don't know, wanted to kind of emulate a bourbon mash. So a lot of corn and very light colored beer that's just been sitting in new American oak alligator number 4 char barrels since then, and apparently it still tastes good. So this is good. Well, I should put that in bottles or stainless or something. But.
Yeah. Well, we tasted it. It's been over a year now, but the last time we tasted it, it was doing its thing, and it's the only beer in our Spirit Barrel program that we actually top. So I don't remember how many barrels you started with, Patrick. I think it might have been 8 or 10.
I think it was 8.
8, and we have
4.
6 barrels now, and I think one one half barrel keg that we're topping with, but it's quite a beast of a beer, really.
Yeah, evaporation's real.
Yeah, no, it's way real. But yeah, it's a really fun thing, and then I don't have the 10 years that Patrick has, but I have this failed cigar barrel acetic acid bomb that has been in there for 4 years. So,
what's everyone else got? What's the longest you've? Let's just go around the horn on this one. What's the longest you've left a beer in barrel?
For me,
so me right.
Go, Nick.
Sorry. Right now, I've got some Bigfoot barley wine that's 6 years in bourbon barrels.
Damn, right on.
And it's really an example of how much aging can modify a beer. And Bigfoot barley wines, big beers like that, lend themselves to that sort of maturation. But I mean, you see the color has developed, the flavor. It's just kind of almost like a caramel sauce now. It's pretty cool. We've got some older barrels, but we're not really proud of those.
Right. Yeah, exactly. That's a trick question in some ways. What do you got, Sarah?
What's intentional?
Yeah.
What about you, Sarah? What do you guys got at Oscar Blues?
we don't go too long. I think the longest we've had here intentionally is about 3 years. A couple years ago, we just did a blend of our barrel aged stout and did a blend with the 3 year, 2 year, and 1 year. And then did a couple kegs of the 3 year by itself, but we don't go too much longer than that.
Nice.
Or at least we haven't yet.
Right.
Sean.
About 2.5 years. It's about as long as we can get away with our temperature.
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay, I'm going to do 2 more questions, and then we're going to wrap this thing up. Let everybody go just drink beers and enjoy them. So next up, no, not that one. Let's see. I have it right here. So I think we answered this, but I keep seeing it pop up like multiple times. I'm a home brewer, so maybe it's a bit different, but how many times can you / do you reuse a barrel? Nick, what you got for us?
We typically don't at all. A lot of what we're trying to get is that spirit character. We in our sour program, we've reused some barrels for sure, a handful of times. If you count our rum barrels, that I think were reused for rum about a dozen times before they fell off the pirate ship. They get used a lot, but for beer, and a lot of it is beer is probably the dirtiest thing that's going to go into those barrels. So, as long as you have spirit in it, they're pretty stable, they're pretty sanitary. Once you put beer in there, unless you're topping it off right away and extensively cleaning it, it's going to be a horrible infection hazard. So we typically don't reuse barrels.
Any thoughts that counter that over here? What does everyone else do?
Yeah, I think for our sour program, if the beer coming out of the barrel is good, then we consider the barrel good. If the beer is bad and we got to dump it, the barrel's trash. Totally different on the spirit barrel side. Everything there is used once and then discarded. We have played around with rebarreling into previous used barrels, but I think if it's a volume play, then it's fair. But if you don't need it, for us, I don't think it makes our beer better. And we are going for, when we put something on the the SOC on the label and it says bourbon barrel age, we want that to mean something, and I certainly don't want an SOC that says, third use of bourbon barrels. I don't want that. I don't think that's appealing. I don't think that's a selling point. I think it works and it's possible for blending purposes, and you do what you got to do to make your product the best as a maker that you think it should be. But for our program, it's one and done.
Yeah, and I think if we wanted to reuse our spirit barrels, the amount of energy and water that we'd have to use in cleaning them and getting them ready for a second use would just be a waste of resources for what you're getting from a second use barrel.
Okay, last question.
How much wood?
How much wood is a good one? Yeah. How much wood would a woodchuck chuck? So what do you do when you're done with barrels? I think that's a solid question. What do you do when you're done with barrels? We don't necessarily have to answer the Jameson cask mate thing. I'm not really sure what he's asking, but maybe it's asking if we ever send to distilleries to then age spirits again in beer aged barrels.
Sure.
But yeah, what do we do with them? What happens after we're done with them?
Well, I could tell you that most of ours end up going to furniture or other uses. We actually have Patrick worked with somebody years ago, and we actually had a bunch of wood flooring material made from barrel staves that actually are in our offices now, which is pretty cool. Yeah, but we let them go. I forgot the question actually as I was talking right now.
What do you do? A lot of planters out there.
Yeah, a lot of planters.
We built our patio with used barrels, I guess.
Yeah, I really.
Yeah, we sell truckloads of spent barrels to essentially to the barrel brokers. It goes to furniture. That market's changed so much in the last 10 years. It used to go. Speyside Cooperage would buy it and they'd go off to Scotland, but now Scotland's full of barrels. So, yeah, we try and pass off as many to employees as we can to make planters, and that works in the spring. But the rest of the year, we've got to get creative and load up truckloads to the brokers.
Yeah, I also think we're fairly apprehensive about selling barrels for liquid use. The few times we have, and Patrick, I can't remember the name of it. Was it Craftwork or something like that? We sent some barrels to the Apple Brandy guys, Copper and Kings, some Black Tuesday barrels that they finished an apple brandy in. We sent some barrels to a cider company for them to finish. But I think we kind of look at our used cooperage as being ours, and any time we would work with anybody else that was going to put liquid in that, we kind of view that as a collaboration type of thing. So generally speaking, like, other breweries, distilleries, wineries, the answer is usually no. Like, no, we're not going to sell you these barrels unless we want to work with you in some sort of way. So Isaac, just putting that out there.
Yeah, the Copper and Kings one was good. That was great. I've tried that mead, a mead from Superstition Meadery that was in Black Tuesday barrels. It was pretty awesome. So I think some second uses work. But yeah, it's nice when you have a heads up and you get to bung it right after you empty it. You fill it with CO2, and you want to baby that barrel to make sure it's gonna get there okay. If it's hanging outside for 2 weeks without a bung on, and someone says, "Oh, I want to fill up my I want to put something in this," it's pretty scary.
Yeah.
It is fun to see where they go. Years ago, we did a project with Copper and Kings. That's got to be 6 years ago. And I was in Kentucky last year, and I was visiting their cellar, and that barrel was there with our logo painted on the head, and they were selling pours out of the barrel, which was just kind of shocking to see. It was pretty awesome.
Yeah, that is awesome.
All right, guys. I think that's it. I think we answered a ton of questions. People seem really happy. Thanks to all of you for coming on and sharing your knowledge. This was a fun one. I keep seeing one question pop up that I can't not answer. So anniversary party for the brewery. Yes, we are doing something. Mark your calendars for July. Obviously, it might not be the extent of what you're used to from these parties, but we are going to do something. It is going to be in July, and it will be as awesome as we can make it, given the situation and what's going on in the world right now. But thanks again, Patrick, Sarah, Nick, Sean,
Hey,
Isaac.
real quick.
Yeah.
Rick, can I just comment on the question that I didn't hear? I thought for sure we were going to get a whose is bigger question. You know, but I'm glad we didn't have to compare on that. But.
I shaved.
Anyway, Daniel, I know you're trying to sign off. I just want to say, hey, you guys, Sean, Sarah, Nick, Isaac, Pat, thanks for joining us. It's been a pleasure hanging out with you guys, and a pleasure seeing old friends and making new ones as well.
Thanks so much.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
It was a blast.
It was awesome.
Awesome.